Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. My name is Councillor David Connor, and I'm the Chairman of the Planning Committee here at Fenland, and will be chairing today's meeting. Welcome to those members of the press and public who are joining us via the live stream. Before we begin, can I please take this opportunity to remind everybody to turn their mobiles and computers to silent and ensure that when using the microphones, the red light is on and turned off when you finish speaking. We will now go to agenda item number 1, and I'd like to ask member services, in this case it's Joe, if we have any apologies for absence. So Joe?
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies to report.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the 7th of August 2024. Do I have a proposer to approve the minutes of August the 7th? Councillor French, I've got a seconder. Councillor Miffordon, can I have a show of hands on that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. State if you have anything to declare in relation to any agenda item here this afternoon. So over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Joe. As always, I know Matthew Hall from Morton Hall. He's done work with Growing Fenland and personally for myself in the past. Also on item 6, I'm part of Fenland Future, so I'll be stepping away from that one. And item 10, the FDC application, because I'm Cabinet Member, I'll be stepping away from that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Connor.
No, nothing today, Joe, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a member of Marchtown Council, but I don't take any part. Item 6 it is FDC asset. I've not been involved, so I'm not predetermined on that. Item 10, which is Broad Street toilets, I will not take part. I'm the chairman of the MATS, and also I'm on the steering group for the regeneration. I will be leaving the room.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hicks.
It's just number 10 today. I won't be taking any part in this, as it could be perceived to be predetermined on that one. So that's...
Thank you. Councillor Mafferdon.
Thank you. Item number 6 and item number... Yeah, I think it's just item number 6. And Mayor Wisbech, I will not... I will take part in the discussion, but I'm not predetermined. Thank you.
Can you just clarify you're taking part in that item?
Yes, I am taking part. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Marks.
Nothing to declare.
And Councillor Senate Clough.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Now we'll go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on a planning application when invited to do so. However, I will be initially asking for anyone to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if no proposal is forthcoming, or if that proposal fails, I'll be then looking for an alternate proposal. Members are reminded that such a proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. As previously stated, item number 5 has been withdrawn, so we'll move on to agenda item number 6. So I'll now hand it to Tim Williams. He's a Senior Development Officer here at Fenland, to present application F/YR24/0485, variation of agenda item number 6, variation of conditions. Thank you. Tim, for you when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Summary on the slide there showing this is a variation of condition application under section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act. The variation being sought is to that of condition number 1 of planning permission F/0914/0914/FDL, which was granted in June 2023, and this was for the erection of a care home for up to 70 apartments, commercial floor space, Class E, and 90 square metres of 900 square metres and up to 60 residential dwellings, all outlined. And the variation being sought in this application is to enable that development to come forward in a phased matter rather than in its totality, as the wording of that particular condition specifies. And then just to give a quick oversight on the slides, that the red line shows the site on the OS plan and on the aerial image as well. The applicant has provided a phasing plan with the application following a request from officers. You can see on there, phase 1 is in the southwest corner, opposite the river. Phase 2 is on the opposite side to the east, and then phase 3 is to the north. Since the determination of the original application in 2023, there's been no new policy introductions that would alter the previous recommendation. Neither have been any material considerations that have changed. None of the consultee responses have raised any issues, and the final point was that we don't believe there's any change to the viability position that existed at that particular time, with the site not providing any financial contributions. So in this instance, the recommendation is to approve the variation of condition 1, but as well as condition 1, there is consequential changes required to some of the other conditions, where these are for the submission of further details to allow those details to be submitted and approved for each particular phase approved, and section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act allows the council to do that.
Right, thank you very much. We have no speakers on this application, so I'd now like to invite members to put questions to officers. I don't think there's anything really that we need to ask you, really, is there? I think it was outlined in the officer presentation, so thank you very much. So members, let's debate the application. Councillor French.
I don't think it requires any debate, Mr. Chairman.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So anybody got anything to add to that? Okay, so no, the debate's very, very short, thank you. Officers, I don't suppose you've got anything, so we'll nip to a proposal. Councillor French, what's the proposal?
Move the officer's recommendations.
I've got a second for that, Councillor Miffordon. So we've got a recommendation to grant this application proposed by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Miffordon. Can we have a show of hands on that proposal?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
So obviously that has been allowed. Thank you. Right. So now I'll hand over to Tim Williams again to present application FY/F/YR19/09440, agenda item number 7. So Tim, when you're ready again, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application at Sutton Road in Leverington is a resubmission of an outline application for 33 dwellings that was refused in 2019. The application was not appealed. The ground for refusal were 2 relating to flood risk, with half of the site being within flood zone 3, the highest level of flood risk. There was no sequential test submitted with that previous application. As members will see from the date of the application, it has been some time since the application was submitted. There's been a lot of going back and forwards between officers and the agents regarding the application. A flood risk assessment and sequential test have now been submitted on this site. But just looking at the application itself, it's to the west of Sutton Road. You can see the red line there, predominantly an agricultural field. As I said, the application is in outline with all matters reserved apart from access, the access being on the eastern side of the site, as you can see, onto Sutton Road. This is the site set in its wider context. To the north west is Leverington, and then more to the south east is Wisbech. Although the application is in outline, there is an indicative site plan this shows the access coming in. Then there is quite notably a sort of bit of a pinch point from the main access as it goes into the main sort of rectangle of the field. Then there's indicative showing some public open space and 34 dwellings. There's also, you can see, well, in the sort of southwest corner going upwards, there is a blue line. Essentially to the north of that blue line is flood zone 3. To the south of it is flood zone 1. So that gives an idea of where the flood zone demarcation is. Some photographs here showing the site access is where the sort of overgrown hedge line is, and there are 2 access points to residential properties adjacent on either side. You can see those on the 2 photographs at the bottom. And that this is the site taken from some distance away, actually within the village of Leverington, showing that there is quite a bit of open space, agricultural land between the site and the village itself. Yeah, there's been extensive consultation on this application. As mentioned, a large portion of the site and number of dwellings are within the area currently designated in flood zone 3, the highest area of flood risk. The proposals are not considered to have passed a sequential test when considered against other more suitable land in Wisbech with respect to flood risk. The sequential test provided by the applicant has put their area of search in relation to the village of Leverington, and the flood and water supplementary planning document says that the area of search needs to be justified and agreed with the LPA. So there is a difference as to the area of search for the sequential test. Separate to that, the advice of the local highways authority is that the proposed access and internal road has not demonstrated it can be provided without resulting in the risk of collisions due to inadequate space. So there's an objection in terms of the access. Coming onto Sutton Road, but also the pinch point in that corner going into the proposed estate, it's very narrow. I think it's 2.9 metres. So the potential conflict there between pedestrians and road users, and I don't think the local highway authority have raised questions, especially with regard to refuse lorries as well. And then more recently, as per the update provided, the advice of the County Council's ecologist is that they recommend refusal due to the absence of further survey work relating to protected species, in this case reptiles, as recommended in the preliminary ecological appraisal submitted by the applicant. Then just finally, in the last day or so, we have had a further letter which appears to be in support from a neighbour, this being the same person who has previously commented on the application. So, Chair, the final recommendation is that the application be refused on 3 grounds relating to flood risk, highway safety, and insufficient evidence regarding the level of impact on protected species, namely reptiles.
Yep, thank you very much. Once again, we have 1 speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Gareth Edwards, of course he's the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. When you're nicely seated, you've got 5 minutes, and start when you like. Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application for up to 33 dwellings at land west of 85 to 111 Sutton Road, Leverington. As the above slide shows, the site is a continuation of the developed line of Glendon Gardens and Sutton Meadows, and also then a further development of agricultural buildings to the north, and utilises all the land owned by the applicant, with no third-party land other than the public footpath and verge in county ownership. As indicated, part of the site is within flood zone 1 and part is within flood zone 3. It was interesting to note that parts of the flood zone land, 3 land, is actually higher than flood zone 1. As the slide shows, we are over 500 metres from the River Nene and has the recently started development of 221 dwellings between it and the river. That's also indicated on the slide was mostly in flood zone 3 and is constantly brought up at this committee. We have carried out this sequential and exception test on the site for Leverington, and this passes as there are no sites available that can meet the number of dwellings proposed. We've also offered a reduced time frame for reserved matters for the exception test to pass. We have used Leverington for the sequential search as that is the postal address and only Leverington Parish Council have been consulted on this application. And as the report also states, the site is within Leverington Parish. The change, the additional reduction in timeframes for reserved matters shows we are committed to bringing this site forward as soon as possible. It should also be noted the EA, LLFA, Anglian Water and North Level are in support of this application, subject to the relevant applications to themselves and mitigations, which will all be done on a plan application. As the plan shows, this is an indicative layout and will be subject to change when it is, if it comes forward as a reserved matters. But as the report states, the indicative proposal would not generate serious concerns of loss of privacy or over dominance. As stated, we have kept the site area to what the applicant owns, which has led to the opportunity to create a priority lane which will act as a speed restrictor but still provides the continuous footpath link through the site. This part of the road is wider than half of the estate road, so allows for service vehicles and emergency vehicles to move through the site with adequate turning, so they are always entering and exiting in a forward gear. The main access onto Sutton Road has an adoptable entrance but will require works to the existing footpath and potentially one of the neighbouring entrances to achieve adoption. At this stage, we have not approached either neighbour, but would be happy for a condition which requires county approval for the access. We believe there is an engineered solution available that will be fully investigated on the approval and with the approval of highways. This application comes with the support of the majority of statutory consultees and achieves a 17% biodiversity net gain on ecology, when it is only required to achieve neutrality. I must admit I wasn't aware of any objection from ecologists. I was under the impression that all surveys have been done, including the reptile survey, and we can look into this and would be more than happy to accept a condition for this. Regarding Section 106, we emailed your planners in October 23 to confirm we was happy to go with the council's request for a 10% provision of first homes on the site, in line with the adopted Section 106 provision. The client has also indicated they would be happy to accept a payment per dwelling on top of this if it was felt necessary. Finally, the proposal is consistent with other developments in limited growth villages under LP3, especially Coates and Elm, and I would ask you to approve the proposal with the conditions you deem appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Edwards, if you have any. Councillor Marks, please.
Thank you. Regarding the access onto the main road, you say that you haven't approached the two neighbouring properties yet. Is there a reason for that when it's in black and white? Obviously, highways have already put that as an objection in, why you haven't actually spoken to them?
We was looking to secure an approval for and that this could be deemed as residential development before we approached either neighbour. Obviously, there has been some objections locally, and we didn't want to exacerbate that.
Just come in. Surely that's putting the cart before the horse, isn't it?
As I say, the authority or the planners, which we've had a number of them over the time, and also a number of county council people as well, and we just felt the right thing to do was to secure an outline approval on the site, which would then allow us to further enhance and look into what could happen with the access.
So just carrying on from there, I don't see any burnings off from anybody else at the minute. But what about this 2.9 metre pinch point? I don't know. I'm going to look, when you've answered me, I'm going to look for Councillor Marks. He's a lorry guy, to say how wide a normal lorry is. But if
the proposed access for the site is 5 metres through the majority of it. Then we've got this pinch point to where it goes into the residential section. Initially, we'd shown that as a shared surface, as a strip all the way through, so it would be highways then indicate they would sooner continue the footpath through, so we continue with the footpath all the way through. But as I say, that access is round about 2.9 to 3 metres wide, which is more than 2.5 metres for the actual access road.
so, I'm looking for you, Councillor Marks, just some clarification how wide one of the largest lorries are, a construction lorry. So if it's 2.9, we've only got. Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, so anyway, I'll let everybody. I know what I'm thinking, but I'll let somebody else. Councillor Hicks, thank you.
May I ask why you just didn't forget about the pinch point and put a speed hump in?
The site is an indicative layout, so technically we could go with either a footpath, a speed hump, or utilise all of it as access and shared access with a tabletop if required.
Hey, Councillor Marks.
Just to confirm, this isn't going to be an adopted road?
No, County Council won't adopt it, so it would form part of a management company which would take on the public open space and obviously the drainage and suds with it.
Any more members want to contribute? Right, I'm looking to the left, looking to the right, and I see no one. Thank you very much. Members, questions to officers. Councillor French, thank you.
Thank you. Looking at LP3 is limited growth. Would you call 33 dwellings limited? I've got 2 or 3 questions to ask you.
Through you, Chairman, I think as Mr Williams set out in his presentation, we are taking the view, as indeed the council did in respect of the site on the opposite side of Sutton Road, that this is a site that relates more to the built form of Wisbech and therefore needs to be assessed against the policies in respect of Wisbech, rather than being part of Leverington and therefore assessed as in the context of sort of growth village and that discussion around limited growth, etc.
Okay, the next question, sequential test, has that been carried out? The reason I ask this, I attended a meeting yesterday where the Environmental Agency, Anglia Water and the whole bundle of various people, County Council lead, and they were talking about the sequential test, and they're looking to adopt a policy which will require an exceptional test to be done as well. So, you know, we're really taking flooding issues seriously. So has this sequential test or exceptional test been passed?
Through you, Chairman, yes, a sequential test has been carried out, but only in respect of the village of Leverington and not in the context of Wisbech as the kind of the appropriate settlement that clearly this is a site that's bolted onto. And
my last question, looking at highways, they still object to this. I mean, it is a pretty busy road. Are they still objecting? I see they're still objecting in the report, but I know sometimes County Council put in further information.
Through you, Chairman, no, highways are still objecting. I suppose just to come back to a point that Mr Edwards made in respect, I think, to Councillor Marks's question regarding the discussions with neighbours on the access. I would point out this is an outline application with matters committed in respect of access. So essentially what's being applied for on the plan is what's being applied for and what would be being granted if we were, as a council, minded to grant permission for it.
But there is 24 letters of objection, so people are objecting.
And through you, Chairman, the objections are as set out within the application. Yes, sorry, within the application report.
Councillor Marks.
Thank you. On the report of highways, I'm a little confused. If I remember back, we had the old dairy yard at Maney, where the highways made a big thing that there was no passing places. It then turned out to be a private road, so we were then told that didn't sort of like come into this. So we're discussing a pinch point that's on a private development. Do we still need to take that in? Are highways able to comment on that? I still have the worry on the one going onto the road, but regarding the actual pinch point itself.
Through you, Chairman, I think the dairy yard was probably a slightly different scenario in that it was utilising an existing roadway rather than creating a new one, perhaps. Ultimately, highways are there to provide us with advice in terms of the impact on the adopted highway network, but they are also at liberty to comment on other potential highway safety matters, and have obviously identified this pinch point as one of those. It's perhaps rarer that they do comment on those matters, so I think it's perhaps fair to say that if they are flagging that up as a potential issue, it is probably a little bit more severe in its nature, perhaps.
Thank you. As I say, I was just slightly confused regarding that because obviously on the other one, we then had to discard what was being said at the time by highways.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Marks. I think I see Leamington Parish Council are definitely objecting to it, or they were in 2022. I know 18 months has gone by, but as far as you're concerned, they're still objecting to it. Okay, yep. More questions for officers at all? No, thank you very much. Open to debate. Councillor French.
I think with the reports we've got in front and what we've heard today, there's no way I can support this application.
Okay. Councillor Marks.
I would agree with Councillor French, and I think the highways thing is quite serious. Looking at that, whether we get into pinch points within the site, they haven't spoken to the neighbouring properties anyway. I don't really see why this is here, to be fair. I agree with what officers have said.
Yeah, I think I've got a way of seeing where this is going. I've got a feeling where this is going. But anybody else want to join this debate? No. Okay, thank you. Officers, have you got anything to add? So I'm looking for a proposal here. Councillor French?
Go with officers' recommendations.
Okay, have we got a second for that? Councillor Marks. So we've got a recommendation from Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Marks, to refuse this application. Can I have a show of hands on that?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
That application has been refused. Thank you. So fast, I can't keep up with the paperwork. I don't think we need a comfort break, but I'll hand over to David Rowan again. He's the development manager here to present application F/YR24/0458. It's a PIP application, agenda item number 8. So David, when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, it's an application for permission in principle to erect up to 7 dwellings, land east of Hillview, Eastwood End at Wimbledon. The application site is shown in red on the location plan and on the aerial photo. It sits to the southeast of Eastwood End, adjacent to new dwellings to the sort of the northeast of the site, and then also a farm group to the sort of the west. The site is currently residential in nature, and you can see also the application site also encompasses part of an adjacent sort of field paddock area. Just in case members are wondering why there's a sort of a red line spurring off to the east, this is to allow for a water discharge pipe to be utilised to drain the site, and then connects up with the drain to the east alongside the bridleway. While there's no requirement for any indicative details to be submitted with a PIP application, this illustrative plan has been submitted and shows how the development of 7 dwellings on the site could be accommodated. Clearly, it involves a degree of in-depth development. Perhaps interestingly, it does also helpfully also show the sort of alignment of the dwelling immediately to the northeast, which one of those new dwellings I referred to earlier, which fronts onto Eastwood End. So we've got various views of the site and its surroundings. So photograph number 1 is a view west on Eastwood End from the site frontage. 2 is a view east from a similar position. Photo 3 is a view into the site from the kind of point of the indicated site access. As you can see, there's the existing bungalow there. And then 4 is an internal view of the site, showing 1 or 2 of the kind of outbuildings that there are within the site. So to summarise, members will be aware, the only matters to be assessed within a PIP application are location, use and amount of development. While the location and use of the site are considered acceptable in relation to residential development, it is considered that the amount of development and the in-depth nature of this which would result is at odds with the prevailing linear form of residential development on this side of Eastwood End, and would result in an incursion into the countryside to the detriment of the character and appearance of the area. The recommendation is therefore to refuse permission in principle as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. We have 2 speakers on this application. First, I'd like to invite Councillor Maureen Davis. She'll be speaking on behalf of Wimbledon Parish Council to make her presentation to the committee. You, of course, you know you've got 5 minutes to make your presentation, Mrs. Davis, and start whenever you feel comfortable to do so.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Wimbledon and Stoney Parish Council against this application. My understanding of a PIP application is to assess whether the site is suitable for development, so I will limit my presentation to the 3 considerations of stage 1, location, use, and amount of development proposed. Location. The location of the proposed site lies off the southeast corner of Eastwood End, a narrow country lane without pedestrian footpaths or available verges for pedestrians, cyclists or horse riders to use as a safe haven. Passing vehicles have little room to manoeuvre. Large vehicles have to ride the verges. The site is not within the curtilage of the village settlement area as defined in the emerging FDC local plan and indeed the emerging Wimbledon and Stoney neighbourhood plan. The dwellings do not run in the linear design that is present along Eastwood End. Most dwellings have open frontage to the road. This application proposes that dwellings will be set into the countryside off Eastwood End into 2 separate dead-end roads. The access points are located, one on a tight left-hand bend and the other opposite the proposed access for a PIP application for 9 dwellings. This location will cause a road hazard and congestion. It will exclude access to views out over the open countryside. It will change the historic heritage character of the area. Use. The site has been used as a residential home and a small agricultural business in keeping with the character and heritage of the village. There's 1 perfectly good bungalow and a number of outbuildings. It is also one of the only open countryside views left off of Eastwood End. The proposed dwellings would mean changing the use and character of the site, demolition of existing buildings and closure of any open views. And finally, the amount of development proposed. Wimbledon Village has a number of developments under construction. Many of these are not yet finished or even sold. 88 off of March Road, 21 off of Willow Gardens, 2 lots of 3 in Eastwood End, all under construction. 2 lots of 9 also in Eastwood End, and 48 off of East Eaton Estate, having planning permission and yet to start. There's no justification for further development at present in the village. Plus, as raised by the planning officer, the amount of development is considered to be fundamentally unacceptable on the basis that it would result in encroachment into the countryside. With regard to the supporters' comment saying development will provide a mix of houses and complement other developments in the area, the amount of development already in progress does not need complementing and covers a vast mix of housing. There is no justification for more housing in Wimbledon. The granting of previous applications in Eastwood End should not set a precedent. The parish council and local residents stand by the planning officer's decision. There really is no fundamental or justified reason to grant this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Members, questions, clarifications to Ms Davis? Or we can wait, we could wait until Councillor Clough comes back. Probably that would be the most honourable thing to do. No, so we'll do that just for the record. We'll wait till Councillor St Clough returns.
Well, let's have a cup of tea then.
Sure.
I'll go now.
Thank you very much. We'll continue. So we're continuing. Members, questions, clarifications to Councillor Davis if you have any. No, thank you. Got off very lightly, Councillor Davis. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Matthew Hall, he's of course the agent, to make his presentation to committee. You've also got 5 minutes. Start when you feel able and ready to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So this land has been in the Redhead family since the 1950s and was used for a dairy herd. In 1965, the bungalow was built and the applicant's parents moved in the bungalow in the 1980s from King Street. In 2023, the bungalow became vacant as the occupiers were unable to cope with the large grounds and bungalow, and the sheds on site were used for keeping pigs, farm machinery. The site was also used for a plant nursery and shop from about 1995 to 2005. When you look at the map of Wimbledon and Eastwood End, which, as the officer report confirms in the appeal decision, Eastwood End is part of Wimbledon, growth village, in my opinion, there's numerous estates that come off main roads, Rhondda Park, Willow Gardens, Clayfields Drive. Some of those are fairly new, some of them have been established 20, 25 years. When you read in the officer's report, in our opinion, the report confirms the proposed use and location for the development at this site is acceptable. Could we have the map on the screen that I submitted, please? Thank you. So the map on the screen behind me is something we've put together, which, in my opinion, gives an accurate reflection of this area. Our site is obviously in the bottom right-hand corner, southeastern corner, and in my opinion, it rounds off the development in that corner there. It abuts existing residential development, and in the last 4.5 years, there's obviously been quite a few approvals in this section of Eastwood End. Picking up a few things that Councillor Davis said, on the opposite side of this road, and actually along this side of the road, a footpath link has already been approved. It's been set out on site. Section 104 agreement has been given with Anglian Water for the surface water from that footpath and the properties that have been approved here. There's been, my understanding, a lot of backwards and forwards with highways to agree the footpath link. The builder there, I've spoken to him, that's in effect ready to go. So there is a footpath link approved here. This site, as the officer report says, is about a hectare in size, and yes, this is low density, large gardens, which a lot of the properties down Eastwood End have. But also with this site, probably about 20% of it, a quarter of it, cannot be built on, because along the left-hand side, the western side of the site, there is an Anglian water main, which is also across the other site, and then obviously heads south. We've had discussions with Anglian Water, that must not be in any rear garden areas, and I know this plan's indicative, as Mr. Rowan said, but we've set that out so there's still access for Anglian Water and for this development. One key thing here is when you look at the shaded area to the northeast of this site, shaded sort of red, that was an application we put in about 2 years ago, planning in principle, which was for 4 dwellings. That came forward to planning committee with an officer recommendation for approval, and members also supported it. Now, we submitted on the indicative drawing to put in for 4, but when we got the approval, that was approved for up to 9. Now, that application is in now. It's a full application. We've put in for 8 dwellings there, and that's not linear development. That's not linear development. The drawing that we submitted, indicative, didn't show linear development. So if this site's approved, that could match in with that. The officer's report confirms residential use and is acceptable at this site, and in our opinion, this site abuts residential development. The 2 accesses, you can get the 2.4 by 43 metre visibility displays. We've had a topographical survey of this site and all the adjacent sites, so the displays can be achieved. There's an existing access there now. There's also an existing field access with a gate, which I think Anglian Water may use to get to the main if they need to. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Hall. Members, questions, clarifications, if you have any to Mr. Hall? No? Thank you very much. Members, questions to officers? The countdown's coming just in time, Councillor French. Please carry on.
I don't see any comments from Highway. Is it because it's a PIP?
Through you, Chairman. Yes, we don't appear to have had any comments from Highways. I think notwithstanding that, as it's a PIP application, whatever technical issues they may or may not have raised wouldn't be able to be factored into the decision anyway.
Okay, anybody else? No. No last minute? No? Okay, thanks very much. So, we're going to debate the item now, please. Who'd like to kick that off? You would, Councillor Hicks. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. when I visited the site, I thought this would look really nice, but haven't seen the overhead view. I think, from my point of view, it is an encroachment into the countryside. I would love to see this go through because I think it's such a nice area and it'd be an asset to it. But we have to go with the rules, and that, as far as I'm concerned, that's a big part of it today for me, anyway.
Okay, of course, that's your opinion. Councillor Benny, I thought you'd like to come in.
Oh, you thought right then, Mr. Chairman.
Always think right, Councillor
Yeah.
Benny.
I mean, I can remember several applications in Eastwood End. Myself and Councillor French visited this site Sunday, and also remember when myself and Councillor French visited the site when the new houses that are being built both sides of the road were also before us as a planning committee. And I think those houses are an absolute credit in the way they've been built, and they were up for refusal for building in the open countryside. And we've started building, and those houses look really good. I mean, to me, this does seem like this rounds this off. And also, going back several years, there was another application, if my memory serves me correctly, at the other end of Eastwood End, where it had been turned down and it went to an appeal. And it was the appeal was based on whether that's part of Wimbledon or not. And because of that, I can't remember the full details of it, but that application, that appeal, the inspector dismissed the appeal because they considered that this stood in its own merit. And I also feel that this one stands in its own merit. We've got building both sides of the road there. And truthfully, we have got to deliver houses. I mean, this new government says they want 1.5 million, totally unachievable in my opinion, but nevertheless, as planners, we have got to do our bit to that. And yeah, do you want lots of houses crammed in on top of each other all over the place, or do you allow it to spread outwards and still keep very nice houses with nice gardens and keep that open space look about it? It's very low density here, and truthfully, I see nothing wrong with this one at all. The others that we passed, I think it's a credit to the builder whoever's done the building work on these other houses. They look really good. We get pictures on Facebook of, there was one in Chatteris of Whitemill, of a windmill stuck in the middle of nowhere, and below it was a picture of how it is today, and it's got houses on. The development out into the open countryside is not new. It's happened forever, and this is just another evolution of that way of thinking. I personally think this is, looking at this in view of the fact that the others were passed, they were passed against officers' recommendation, but they've delivered some fantastic homes there, worthy of design award, some of those, from what I can see from the outside. So personally, I see nothing wrong with this application whatsoever.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Benny, for that. It was an application from a Mr. King. It was in Eastwood End. It was about a mile from that site, I suppose, further out of Wilmington, and indeed the inspector did go against us. And that is obviously, as I said, probably a mile or more, probably from that site, I suppose, getting on that way, I think, so 800 yards, 900 yards anyway. But that's what it was about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's certainly not in the open countryside, as we can see, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Benny. I had a look at those the other day, and they're fantastic. They are $1 million houses, the two of those down there, which equates to about £800,000. So so that's what some of those are worth down there, I would think. So I feel, although the only thing that does worry me, I think the application, I would support this application, but I am a little bit worried, as Councillor Davis says, with all the houses we are building down there have not been put on the either being built, planning permission, or not occupied, and those three. I just do wonder where the foul water is going to go. Because I do know, and I've spoken to Anglian Water last week, and all the sewers and pumping stations are getting up to capacity. And although they say there is room in the system, they secretly know, which they don't tell us, which I got onto them quite crossly, cross with them the other day, because they're not telling us the truth. So that is my only worry. Where is the foul water going? But, you know, that is obviously Anglian Water's jurisdiction to do that. But other than that, I feel that there's I can't see any reason why I wouldn't, like Councillor Benny, look favourably on this application. Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Chair. My concern with the two properties beside it, which are already built, as you come down the Wimbledon Road, they actually stand quite a long way out and they are quite visible from the Wimbledon Road. This does look to be a smaller development and I think will be hidden better than those two properties. Also on that road, it is very narrow, and at times during heavy flooding or heavy weather, it is quite a wet road as well. So the runoff from the road is another concern I think we need to take into consideration. We did, however, have the one at the bottom, on the Hook Road, which went to, I believe that one also went to appeal, did it not? That came in 3 or 4 times.
That is the one we're talking about.
That was the one, right, sorry. So that is the one when you said it was further out. But at the end of the day, that one was passed by the inspector. So as much as I would like to say I don't think this is a good development, I think, you know, on this occasion I will let it, you know, have to go against officer's decision or recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marks. Anybody else? Councillor Senate Clough.
Thank you, Chair. I disagree with what's been said, and I would go with officer's recommendation to refuse because it isn't in keeping. This design is not following the linear pattern along that lane at all, and it's in contrary to LP16 delivering and protecting high quality environments across the district.
Okay, yeah, thanks for those comments. Anybody else at all? Councillor Miffordin, thank you.
I just add, Chair, I am inclined to support the application personally. I think it, looking at the other developments there when I was on site, I think it fits in properly. The single bungalow on site right now, initially I wasn't clear. It wasn't clear to me if it was going to be demolished or not, but now knowing that what is going to happen to it, and also looking at other properties that are being built when I visited site, I think it will fit in nicely with the area. Like Councillor Bennett said, they're like really quality houses, very, very nice, very good standard. Initially, I thought when I was looking at the plan, I thought to myself, fitting 7 units into that small area, but then the bungalow directly opposite, which is a very, very nice, well-built bungalow, it's about the same footprint as one of the units there. The only other concern I have, I know it's you know, it's not a full plan application, is the actual road, and it's interesting to know that highways have not commented. I know it's not required at this stage. The only thing objection I would have had is the road, because when I was there was a transit van, a long wheelbase transit van coming after making a delivery, and I think the developer of the current units, Savage, I think it's called, had his van on one side of the road, and the transit van did struggle to pass through, probably at the speed it was coming. So that was the only concern I would have had. Otherwise, I'm inclined to support this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for those comments. Anybody else want to enter into the debate before I close it? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, finished. Officers, have you got anything to add to it?
Thank you, through Chairman. I think just to pick up on a couple of issues talked about within the debate, and just to perhaps provide some clarification for members. So the reason for refusal here is not on the basis of is Eastwood End part of Wimbledon or is it a sort of separate settlement. I think given the appeal decision that was referenced, followed up by then the number of other permissions which the council's granted in the vicinity in the intervening sort of 3 or 4 years. I think that argument has perhaps been and gone really. So the reason for refusal here is on the amount of development and the character impact which would arise from that when we get a more detailed application in front of us. Thank you, Chairman.
For that, so I'm going to say for a start, do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? So, yeah, okay, Councillor. So I'll take Councillor Clough then first. So she's going to propose it. You're going to second it, Councillor Hicks. So we've got a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to refuse this. Councillor Clough said it. Clough is and proposing it, and second it was Councillor Hicks. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please? 2. Those against? That's 4. So that obviously has been overdone. So I'm looking for another proposal, please. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I propose we go against officer's recommendation on
Reasons, sir?
I'm coming to them.
Right.
Because I think with the appeal decision, I know we've been told the reasons for that, and as you were explaining it unfolded in my head, I do remember it. But the fact we've already passed applications along here, I do feel it rounds off the development that's there. This is a PIP application that we will see back before us with a more detailed proposal, I'm sure. But I don't feel that the damage done to the building out into the open countryside is detrimental, and I feel that the houses will be much needed. Every house that we build, we're not having loads of empty houses sitting around Fenland waiting for people to move in. If we look at the 9 we've got in Doddington, 7 or 9, I mean, they're sold before they're finished. There is such a need for housing in this area that that argument outweighs the detriment and harm it does to the countryside.
Okay, I'm happy with those reasons. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Miffordin. So we've got a different proposal here to go against officer recommendation to approve this application. Councillor Benny has proposed it. Councillor Miffordin has seconded it. All those in favour of that?
5 votes, Chairman.
Those against? 2. So that application has been approved. Thank you. Does anybody want to stop for 10 minutes, or shall we press on? Sorry? Carry on. Is that a consensus of opinion? Okay, we'll do that then. So now, furthermore, I'll hand over to David Rowan again to present application F/YR24/055110, agenda item number 9. Please, David, you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application to erect up to 3 dwellings with matters committed in respect of access, land south of 34A to 34H Newgate Street, Doddington. The application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits to the rear of properties fronting Newgate Street and will be accessed using an existing access point running between the dwellings on the frontage. As I've indicated, access is a committed matter as part of this application. Immediately to the east of the site is an implemented permission for 3 dwellings, which utilises the same access, and the main body of the application site is within flood zone 3. So the plan displayed shows the access from Newgate Street between those frontage dwellings, and indicatively shows the layout of the site with 3 dwellings running north-south, effectively sort of mirroring the approved dwellings on the opposite side of the site. It is not considered that there are any character impacts arising from the development of the site in this potential form. However, unlike the 3 dwellings opposite, which were indicated on the application submission as being outside the flood zone, the application site itself sits, the main body of the application site where the dwellings would be located sits within flood zone 3, as indicated on this slide, which is an extract taken from the EA flood map. So the application submitted does not include any sequential or exception test assessment as required in policy. Photos of the site are shown on screen. So the upper left image shows the access point between the existing frontage dwellings. The upper right image shows the site of the dwellings as shown on the illustrative plan. And then the lower images show the dwellings to the east and the access to the site and the general sort of nature of the site internally. So to summarise, the application site is located within flood zone 3 and is required by national and local policy should be subject to a sequential test. The information submitted with the application does not contain any sequential information and makes no reference to the exception test. As such, the application is clearly contrary to policy and as such is recommended for refusal as set out within the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep, thanks again, David. We have one speaker on this application, and I'd like to invite Matthew Hall once again. He's the agent, of course, to make his presentation to the committee. Again, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. This site has been under the same ownership in the Webb family for over 15 years. There's not been agricultural land in that time. Part of the overall site is already built over with residential dwellings, as Mr. Rowan said. And the officer report, and I think as Mr. Rowan said, confirms that the site is within the built-up form of Doddington. We've proposed, obviously, some flood mitigation measures to match in with floor levels of the adjacent already built properties that were approved in 2016, which will bring these properties' floor levels into flood zone 1. The applicant has confirmed to me that this site has never flooded since his ownership. Could we have the photos on the screen, please, David, that you brought up of the houses? Sorry, please. Just looking at the houses on the left-hand side, which are the 2 out of the 3 that were already approved, 2016 from memory. As you can see there, they've obviously been built up out of the ground. And they're directly opposite this site under the same ownership. Could we have the flood map on the screen that I submitted, please? Thank you. So this is an Environment Agency flood map, which I got off the website yesterday. And the 3 dwellings that David's brought up on the screen, which were approved 2016 under this 10-year-old plan. The bottom plot, I'll call it plot 3 to the south. That's at least half in flood zone 3 and at least another third in flood zone 2. The plot in the middle, plot 2, which hasn't been built yet but has been approved, that's partially in flood zone 3 and partly in flood zone 2. And the other one, the nearest one to the north, that just touches the flood zone 2 line. And those 3 properties, as Mr. Rowan said, are also accessed off this same drive, which is partly in flood zone 3 and partly in flood zone 1. And that map, I got off the Environment Agency's flood map yesterday and submitted it to member services. There are no objections from Environment Agency, Environmental Health or Highways to this proposal, which show floor levels to match in with the dwellings that were approved 2016 under this 10-year-old plan, to match in with those to bring them in flood zone 1. It's already got an access, sewer connections, utilities, and this proposal, there's no further land that could be built out here. This would finish off the development in this area if approved. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Hall. Once again, we've got Councillor Marks first. Thank you for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hall, just to confirm then, the planning that was given in 16, there was no flood mitigation put in place at all?
With the application back then, we didn't do that one. I've just obviously looked back on the history and looked at this flood map. We didn't do it. I can't remember if a flood risk assessment was submitted. There is a flood risk assessment for this site that says, from the Environment Agency, it's their words, not mine, that says this, they're not concerned, they don't believe that possible flooding at this site is from rivers or sea. It's from, they would recommend you contact the Internal Drainage Board, see what their comments are. My understanding is there was no flood risk assessment submitted for those in 2016, but we didn't do those. So,
Councillor Marks, that might be something you can ask officers.
Yep.
If you want to go, if you want to
sorry,
investigate that further. Any more? Oh, Councillor Hicks.
Yeah, just a little point of clarification, if I can. On the actual plans themselves, there seemed to be a row of trees down the left-hand side, Are they existing trees or are they good ones what's going to be planted? Because I couldn't see when I went down to have a site view. Down the left-hand side of the... They're existing.
Sorry. The ones on the...
Start the answers again so that, you know.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, thanks.
So along the northern boundary, there's trees there. On the left-hand side, I don't believe they're there. We're going to plant some if approved. Ones on the left-hand side, yes.
And that's fine.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. Hall? No. Thank you very much. Members, questions to officers, and I'm sure Councillor Marks.
Thank you. Same question to yourselves regarding 2016's application and the planning being granted.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. So, in 2016, a detailed plan was submitted with the application, which indicated that all 3 dwellings were located outside flood zone 3, therefore in flood zone 1, and as such a flood risk assessment would not have been required. And the application was determined on the basis of those properties not falling within the flood zone. Clearly, the Environment Agency map now does seem to indicate that those properties are potentially within certainly flood zone 2. However, I'm not sure whether in the meantime the Environment Agency maps have changed in terms of the modelling, or indeed whether, for that matter, the houses have actually been built in the correct place, which is potentially another factor. But I think to some extent the committee's got to put that case to one side, looking at the application that's in front of you today against the policies that are relevant, and which clearly set out that if you're in flood zone 3, you need to do a sequential test. That's your starting point in terms of addressing flood risk.
Thank you, David.
Did you want to come back, or no? That's any more questions to officers if anybody's got any? No burning desire to? No. Thank you very much for that. So, now I'd like to invite members to debate the item in respect to the material planning considerations available to us. Councillor March, you're the saviour once again. Thank you.
I hate to say it, here we go again with flood zones. We're back into what we did. We've recently done planning training, most of us here sitting in the room as well. We hear about flood zones. This is more difficult this time round because, you know, we may have a map that's moved from what we're hearing from officers, and equally the agent is saying mitigation is the same, the floor level is going to be the same of the previous properties that are now being built or have been built. I really struggle with this because, yet again, I think it's a good application, apart from we come back to flood zones. The other thing about it is, from what the agent has said, there is what's come back so far from the EA is that there's no rivers, no sea that's going to flood it. It will be the local IDB that we have to have information from. And again, there's no report from them. So again, I struggle as to where we go with this. We've built on the top road there. We've built quite a lot of properties, or we've given permission along the top. I don't know. I really don't.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else want to come in there? Councillor French, thank you.
Yeah, I am concerned. Obviously, I do sit on 11 drainage boards, and I am concerned about this flooding issue. I know when it comes to north level, they do comment on planning applications, but not middle level. And I think as members of the drainage boards, we need to be discussing this with the drainage boards. That, you know, there is a flooding issue, there is a flooding issue.
So what can we deduce by those comments, Councillor French? Sorry? What can we deduce by those comments that you just made about the flooding?
I can't support the application.
That's better. Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay. I was just thinking if I can say anything. So, anybody? Oh, so we'll take Councillor Hicks and then we'll take Councillor Benny. Thank you.
Right. Knowing the area as I do, what equates to a hill in the Fens is just literally up the road, Primrose Hill. The road slopes down, and that is not at the bottom of the slope, so I would suggest that any surface water would be going down further to the road. It wouldn't be sitting there, it'd be moving somewhere else. So I'm fully convinced of that. And also, there has been a sort of precedent set already with other buildings. I looked around as far as I could see down the side of it, and there's another building or building similar or in line with it. So that sort of sets a precedent for me to go give that some weight as well.
Right, Councillor Benny, you had your hand up, so.
I did, Chairman, yeah. I mean, I look at it in terms of building, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's a good place, good use of land, but it's in flood zone 3. I think there's probably many people sitting around the table who'd think, yeah, this works, and it will. But in view of the training that we've had over the last few weeks, and also many of us sit on drainage boards, I only sit on one, but I know that the drainage boards are really struggling. We've had a lot of rain over the last few years that have caused flooding. It is in certain areas. A lot of it is caused by people filling drains in and stopping the flow of water. The drainage system works, but the IDBs are really struggling to keep on top of and pump the water away. And we've got national planning policy in front of us that says do not build in flood zone 3 unless you can pass the exceptions test. And we haven't got that today. I don't like the exceptions test. Personally, I think it's a block to good development. That land may never have flooded, and it most probably never will. Or if it does, we're all swimming to work every morning. But the fact is, in view of the training that we've received and the fact that this is in flood zone 3, I don't think we've got any choice. I don't particularly want to turn it down. I'd like to see the houses built. But in terms of policy, this is the right decision is to turn this down based on the policy.
Okay. Anybody else want to add on to this debate? Yeah, well, if the debate's finished, I'm going to bring you in anyway, so we can, it's just if anybody else wants to continue. No, they don't. Yes, they do. Councillor Mifferton on the last step.
Yeah, probably should have asked officers these questions. I'm just going to ask it now if they can answer it.
Well, we're still in debate at the minute. Is this a question for officers?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we'll finish the debate first. Okay. Nobody else wants to enter into it. Sorry? Yeah, right. Officers, what would you like to come back on anything?
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, just in terms of, I suppose, going back to that other application that's been referenced, certainly the approved plan that was submitted in terms of the site layout showed 3 dwellings on a more staggered arrangement, which were done in such a way as to make sure that the properties were outside flood zone 3. The layout that is certainly shown on the submitted details provided by the applicant here, showing the properties in more of a line, doesn't appear to tally with what was approved. So just to, I don't know, it's to give members comfort that the issue of flood risk was adequately considered back in 2016, and on-site circumstances seem to have changed that in terms of the actual layout, and therefore it doesn't really set the precedent that maybe some members are indicating in terms of how this site should perhaps be considered.
Okay, I've got a question. Without going, I could go through the paperwork, but I won't because it's easy enough. How many, this is being turned down as it's in flood zone 3. What, any other reasons? How many are reasons for refusal? I suppose that's the reason I'm going to ask.
Through you, Chairman, the reasons are as set out within the officer report, which is the one reason for refusal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, officers, for that. So I suppose we're looking for a proposal, really. Councillor French.
Go with officers' recommendations.
Okay. So we've got a proposal to go with officers' recommendation to refuse this application proposed by Councillor French. Have we got a seconder for that? To refuse it, Councillor Mifferton. Okay, so we've got a proposal to go with officers' recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Mifferton. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
That's a unanimous decision.
Yeah, the application has been refused then. Last but not least, and I'll hand...
Mr. Chairman, some of us are leaving.
You out, sorry.
Not taking part.
I'm jumping the gun so much, aren't I? You're going to leave the room, Councillor French, aren't you?
Leaving.
All right, okay.
Councillor Benny's going.
Councillor Benny's going as well. You're going home as well, are you? Oh, okay. Not many of us left. Right, so we can now proceed. I'll hand over again to David Rowan to present application F/YR24/0115. It's an FDC application and it's agenda item number 10. So David, when you're ready, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this is a full planning application to erect a single-storey toilet block, and the location is given as land southwest of 2 Broad Street in March. Draw members' attention initially to the update report that's been circulated in respect of this item, and also just to provide a sort of a further verbal update in addition to that report that's been given to you, in that the applicant has confirmed their agreement to the recommended pre-commencement condition contained within the update report, and has also indicated that Anglian Water have agreed to accept the discharge from the development. And additionally, the necessary application has been made to middle-level commissioners in respect of the bylaw strip referenced in the application report, and also within representations made by members of the public. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. It sits between the River Nene and Grays Lane in March Town Centre, to the west of the junction of Grays Lane with Broad Street. This plan shows the location of the site within March Conservation Area, and also shows the location of those listed buildings in the vicinity, which are shown in the sort of the brown. So moving on to the proposed site plan, the siting of the building is obviously shown in the sort of the pink block. It sits at the front of the site on the back edge of the footway. As you can probably make out, there are a number of trees within the site, one of which will need to be removed. The council's tree officer, set out in both the officer report and supplemented in the update report, is largely happy with the principle of this, but does require some further information through that recommended revised condition. The siting of the building has been amended during the application process to address both tree and also some conservation concerns as well. And for reference, the original siting of the building further to the west within the site is shown, so you can clearly see the difference in the siting there. So the elevations of the building are shown here. The front elevation there is the sort of upper image, while the lower image shows the rear. And then we've got the side elevation shown here for reference. And then for completeness, just got the floor layout shown. Moving on to photos of the site. So photo number 1 is a view of the site from Grays Lane, sort of from the west, just on that bend there, for those of you that know the site, with the river sort of sitting in the background. Number 2 is a wider street scene from Grays Lane. Number 3 is a view within the site looking south across the river, and then number 4 is from the opposite river bank, showing a view across to sort of the rear of the site. So to summarise, less than substantial harm and at a lower level of that sort of assessment has been identified in terms of the impact on the conservation area, in terms of sort of enclosing the views of the river. However, as set out in the MPPF, that harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the scheme. The delivery of replacement public conveniences to serve the town centre is considered to deliver sufficient benefit to outweigh that identified harm. The revised siting of the building is considered to have addressed previous concerns regarding the impact upon trees, and the recommended condition should further protect those trees remaining on site, and consequently the recommendation is therefore to grant planning permission as set out within the agenda and as amended within the update report. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep, thanks once again, David. We have no speakers on this application, so I'd like to invite members to put questions to officers. And I think if no one else is going to, I think I will. Okay, a lot's been mentioned about antisocial behaviour. Certainly there was in the old toilet block. All sorts of shenanigans used to go on there, I think. So we want to make sure nothing of the like goes on in this new application. It looks really good, I have to say, but what precautions are we going to take? CCTV, extra lighting, and anything else that can go with it, so to go some way of reducing the risk of the antisocial behaviour. That's where I think the main problem will be for me. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. So, as part of the application, the Cambridge Constabulary Designing Out Crime Officer was consulted, and their comments are reported in summary within the agenda pack. CCTV and lighting is proposed as part of the application. You might be able to just make out the annotations on the drawing on the screen here. In that respect, I think to some extent the issue of ASB sort of around the toilets partly comes down to a management issue rather than perhaps a planning issue, and hopefully as an FDC asset it will be managed in an appropriate manner. But as far as sort of from the planning side of things, there are measures in there in terms of, as I say, CCTV and lighting, which should go some way towards dealing with those issues. Clearly there have been issues in the vicinity allegedly in the past, and therefore those sort of issues are kind of ongoing and probably part of the sort of the wider policing of the town centre in this area that also needs to take place. So I think there's perhaps a slight separation of the planning powers to the powers of other bodies or other areas of responsibility of this authority in that respect.
Yeah, I think that gives me, I think you're absolutely right. You say we haven't got any planning powers for that, but obviously it does give me a little bit of comfort to know there's extra lighting and CCTV there. So that does give me comfort. So any more questions to officers at all? Councillor Miffordon, thank you.
A quick question about the middle level commissioners. Has there been a consent letter from them?
Through you, Chairman, there's no consent letter as far as I know, but as indicated in the update, the applicant has indicated to me that they have made the relevant application for that consent to middle level, and that will obviously be dealt with through that separate consenting process that they have.
Okay, thank you for that. We're open for debate. Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off if anybody else can, if they like. Do you want to kick it off, Councillor Marks? Please do if you wish.
It's much needed. It's in the vicinity of the old toilet block as well. It doesn't, to me, look out of character. I've seen there is an article in one of the papers or the blog or something regarding there is one gentleman who's a bit upset regarding his house, the direction from his house or his property. However, in saying that, you know, we need it as the officers have said. You know, what we have to outweigh what is correct, and it's a needed facility for March. So personally, I will be supporting this.
Yeah, I'll come in there. It's absolutely imperative we have this. Yeah, March has always had toilets, probably not up to the right spec for toilets, but this one most certainly is. It's up to the day. It's the 21st century toilets. It'd be nice to see them come up. It's absolutely essential we support this. I think the officers have got this right, and for me, it's a no-brainer really, and I'm happy to go with officers' recommendation to approve this without further delay. But I'm open to anybody else who wants to say anything. No, that's it then. Thanks for that. So, officers, you obviously haven't got anything to say, have you? So, I'm looking for a proposal. Councillor Marks, what are you proposing?
To go with the officer's recommendation to approve.
Okay, have we got a second for that? Councillor Mifferton. So we've got a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to approve these toilets, proposed by Councillor Marks, seconded by Councillor Mifferton. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
It's unanimous, Chairman.
That has been approved. So that concludes today's planning meeting here at Fenland, and the time is 26 minutes past 2. Thank you. Thank you for everybody for attending. Thank you.